The lawyer's pen scratched across the deed transfer papers, and I felt my chest tighten, not from my age or my heart, but from something darker stirring in my gut. 68 years old, and I'd just done the dumbest thing of my life. Behind me, my son Marcus stood with his hand on my shoulder, squeezing it like we'd just accomplished something together. We hadn't. I'd accomplished it. 10 years of double shifts at the factory, skipped vacations, ramen noodles at 65, all to pay off the mortgage on the 4-bedroom colonial I'd promised him would be his someday. "Thanks, Dad," Marcus said, his voice thick with what I wanted to believe was gratitude. "This means everything to us." I signed my name, Thomas Brennan, and watched the house slip through my fingers like water. The same house where I'd carried his mother over the threshold in 1982. The same house where we'd raised him, where she'd died in the upstairs bedroom 5 years ago, where I'd sat alone every night since, rattling around in memories and empty rooms. "Just take care of it," I said, handing him the keys. "Your mother loved this place." 3 weeks later, I stood on the sidewalk outside that house, my house, staring at 7 cars crammed into the driveway and 3 more parked on the lawn I'd seeded by hand in 1983. The grass was already dying under the tires. I'd come by to drop off some of my mother-in-law's china that Marcus's wife, Diane, had asked for, said she wanted it for Sunday dinners. The family heirloom stuff, delicate pink, roses on white porcelain that had survived 3 generations. I'd wrapped each piece in newspaper and driven across town to my new apartment, a 1-bedroom box that smelled like cigarettes from the previous tenant. The front door swung open before I could knock. A young woman I'd never seen before stood there, maybe 25, holding a screaming toddler on her hip. "Yeah," she said, not unfriendly, just confused. "I'm looking for Marcus. I'm his father." Her face didn't change. "Oh, he's at work. I'm Diane's cousin Rosa from Guatemala." She pronounced it Guatemala, rolling it like music. "We just got here last week." "We?" "Me, my husband Carlos, our 2 kids, and my brother Miguel. Diane sponsored us." She smiled, genuinely warm. "This house is a blessing, so much room." I stood there holding my box of china like an idiot. Through the doorway, I could see into my living room, Marcus's living room now. The leather couch I'd spent 3 years saving for was shoved against the wall, covered in children's toys. The coffee table I'd built in my garage was buried under empty plates and red plastic cups. The walls where Sarah's paintings had hung were bare, except for a flat-screen TV the size of a refrigerator. "Is Diane here?" I managed. "Upstairs with the baby. You want me to get her?" Before I could answer, a man emerged from the kitchen, my kitchen, carrying 2 dripping beer bottles. He was young, muscular, wearing a tank top that showed elaborate tattoos running down both arms. "Rosa, where's the bottle opener?" He spoke in Spanish, then noticed me. "Oh, sorry, man, you need something." "This is Marcus's dad," Rosa explained. "Thomas." "Carlos." He shifted both bottles to one hand and extended the other. His grip was firm, confident. "Great house, man. Thanks for having us." "Thanks for having us," as if I'd invited them, as if this was still mine to share. "I brought some dishes Diane wanted," I said, my voice sounding strange and distant. "I'll just leave them in the kitchen." I walked past them, through the house I'd lived in for 43 years, and everything was wrong. The hardwood floors I'd refinished myself were scuffed and sticky. The kitchen, Sarah's kitchen, where she'd baked cookies every Sunday, smelled like unfamiliar spices. The counters I'd installed were covered in dirty dishes, rice cookers, and grocery bags. Someone had stuck decals on my stainless steel refrigerator. Children's handprints covered the sliding glass door to the backyard. Through that glass door, I saw my garden, or what was left of it. The tomato plants Sarah had loved were trampled. Someone had set up a cheap plastic kiddie pool where her roses used to be. A man I didn't know was grilling on my Weber, the one I'd bought with my first bonus check in 1989. "Mr. Brennan." I turned. Diane stood in the doorway, holding baby Emma. Diane, who'd seemed so sweet when Marcus brought her home 6 years ago. Diane, who'd cried at our wedding and called me Dad, and said she wished her own father was half the man I was. "Hi, Dad," she said, and at least she had the grace to look uncomfortable. Did Marcus know you were coming? I brought the china, like you asked. I set the box down on the only clear spot on the counter. Didn't know you were running a hotel now. Her face hardened. Their family, my family. They had nothing in Guatemala, no opportunities, no safety. We have this big house just sitting here, and Marcus agreed we should help them get on their feet. Get on their feet, I repeated. How many people are living here, Diane? That's really not your concern anymore. Her voice went cold, the way Sarah's used to when she'd made up her mind about something. Marcus owns this house now. You gave it to him. What we do with it is our decision. The baby started crying, and Diane turned away from me, bouncing Emma and murmuring in Spanish. I stood there in my kitchen, in their kitchen, feeling like a ghost haunting my own life. I left without saying goodbye. That night I sat in my apartment and did something I hadn't done since Sarah died. I cried, not pretty crying, but the ugly, gut-wrenching kind that makes you fold in half and question every decision you've ever made. I'd worked myself to exhaustion for 10 years, lived like a monk, denied myself every small pleasure, all so my son could have something solid, something real, something that represented our family, our history, our love. And he'd filled it with strangers before the ink was dry on the deed. I called him around 9. He answered on the 4th ring, and I could hear laughter and music in the background. A party. They were having a party in my house. Dad, what's up? I'm kind of in the middle of something. I stopped by today, brought the china Diane wanted. Oh yeah, she mentioned that, thanks. Silence. He wasn't going to explain, wasn't going to apologize, wasn't going to acknowledge anything was wrong. Marcus, how many people are living in that house? A pause. Why does it matter? Because 3 weeks ago, it was supposed to be you, Diane, and the baby. Now it looks like you're running a refugee camp. Dad, his voice turned sharp. Don't be like that. These are good people who needed help. Diane's family. They're starting over in America, just like everyone's family did at some point. I thought you'd understand that. Grandpa Brennan came over from Ireland with nothing. Grandpa Brennan didn't move into someone else's house. It's my house, he was shouting now, and the music in the background stopped. You gave it to me. You said it was mine to do with as I pleased. Well, this pleases me, Dad. This is what Diane and I decided together, and you don't get a vote anymore. The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, staring at the wall of my apartment where a water stain shaped like Texas spread across the ceiling. My son was right, technically. I'd given him the house, signed it over free and clear, no strings attached. I'd imagined him raising Emma there, maybe giving her a brother or sister. I'd imagined Sunday dinners where I'd be invited, where we'd eat on Sarah's china and tell stories about her. I'd imagined being grandpa, bouncing kids on my knee in the same living room where I'd bounced Marcus. I'd imagined being part of something instead of sitting alone in an apartment that wasn't mine, listening to my upstairs neighbors fight about whose turn it was to take out the trash. The next few months were hard. Marcus didn't call. I drove by the house once and saw that someone had painted the shutters, a color Sarah would have hated. The mailbox we'd chosen together at the hardware store was gone, replaced with a cheap plastic one. The maple tree I'd planted when Marcus was born had a car parked so close to it that the bumper was denting the bark. I thought about selling my tools, the ones I'd used to fix every problem that house had thrown at me over 4 decades. But I couldn't. They were all I had left that connected me to that life, so they sat in my apartment storage unit, gathering dust, while I learned to live small. Then 6 months after I'd signed over the deed, my phone rang at 2 in the morning. It was Marcus, and he was crying. Dad, he said, I need help. Can you come over, please? I was there in 15 minutes.